neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor.
Okay, Decatur, it's 9 o'clock, and it's time to meet your neighbor right here on Voices of Decatur with your host, Mike Johnson.
It's Voices of Decatur. It's 9 o'clock. And what we do, it's a new season, guys. Think of us as your new Game of Thrones. Not really. She laughs at that. It's a new season of interviews. We've got a great lineup coming up all month long, all year long. And what a great way to kick off our first show of the year. We were supposed to have her on when the year was closing out and things happened. She's back in her hot seat. It's not a hot seat. It's actually a cool seat. Dr. Kristin Moody is in the building.
This is a lot of pressure.
No, it's not a lot of pressure. No, I'm glad that I'm actually very glad that you're here. And before we get into talking about, what we've been posting about and, letting everybody know, you were talking to me about Spider-Man right before, because what was on last night? What was it? What was on? The Golden Globes. Mm-hmm. And it actually won.
Oh, for real?
For, like, best animated whatever, right? And I hadn't seen it. Then she comes in here and was like, "Have you seen Spider?" I was like, "You're talking about the animated one, right?"
I had no intention. I'm not into
You're talking about the
movie.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, it knocked my socks off. I had no intention of liking it. I'm not into
You
that
liked
genre.
it.
I loved it. It might have been one of my favorite movies I've seen in like a really long time.
Your boy Mace probably loved it though. He was probably in heaven.
My son loved it, but I also feel like my husband and I liked it on a level. It referenced the music. Yo,
it's that good?
It was so good.
Now I feel like I gotta watch it, man.
Because I mean, was it like Souls of Mischief or something?
You don't understand.
Like in the first 15 minutes, and I was like,
so good.
No, you don't understand. She walked in here. She asked me if I saw it. And I said no, and I got to look. Like it was like you of all people, because obviously I have a shrine of superheroes throughout my house. Yeah. But anyway, thank you for coming in tonight. So everybody knows, last time Dr. Moody was in here, we actually brought her in here because I had a question about graduation rates in schools and blah, blah. You can actually go back on our website and check out the interview. But in that conversation, prior to that conversation, we've been having some talks about a thought, an idea.
You've been mentoring me.
Right? A thought, an idea.
Mm-hmm.
Could the arts just be another form of learning, teaching, and changing the world? I mean, we're going to dumb it down a little bit, but that's really the bigger conversation. And then when you look at it, we started talking about how big we are as a metropolitan city, this Mecca, the southeastern Mecca that we have. And when you come here, there's really no real, school of the arts, if you would. There's some.
The Cab School for the Arts would be offended by that.
Okay, they would be, but this is me speaking, not you. Mm-hmm. Just saying, I just feel like...
Well, there's a kind of school for the arts that we don't have.
Where did you go to school?
So I went to Baltimore School for the Arts, and it changed my life.
What's the one in Chicago?
Chi Arts.
Okay, so...
And L.A. County High School for the Arts, and LaGuardia, which is in New York, and Ruth Awa, which is in San Francisco, and Houston, right?
Okay, hold on a second. Stop for a second. No, listen. Gee, here's my point, and this is just my opinion. Every city you just mentioned, you smiled. Mm-hmm. And you said but you said there's the Cab School for the Arts.
So let me be clear, so that I'm not throwing shade.
No, not you. This is me
so
saying
you're
that.
Not
This
throwing
is just
shade.
no. I'm not throwing shade either. This is not shade. Honestly, this is just what I'm saying is what we do here. The reason I created this platform, I artistically created this platform, is to try to figure out how to make us better as a place, as a community. It's just how do we grow and how do we just become better in all aspects of the word. Right. And this is definitely one of those that I feel is extremely important. Right. And I feel as much of a staple as we are here in the Southeast, we need to have that kind of impact. Absolutely. Right. Now, I don't feel like I'm not saying that the Cab School for the Arts isn't an impactful school. Right. But I just feel like there could be more of a punch.
Well, let me give you some criteria, and then it can make it really clear.
Okay.
So, there are lots of different kinds of schools for the arts. There are magnet programs. There are programs that are charters, and all of those different kinds of programming offer different amounts of intensity of arts instruction and different sort of like allocations of resources for arts instruction. And DeKalb School for the Arts and Tri-Cities are both two places that locally serve kids that have put in a tremendous amount of work and have incredible professionals working there, giving talented kids access to arts education that's sorely lacking elsewhere. And they both are phenomenal programs. They are different from an LA County or a LaGuardia in that they are programs that have they are magnet programs. Like to go to DeKalb School for the Arts, there's admission criteria that you have to meet beyond just being super talented. What some of the schools like in LA County or a Chi Arts or a Baltimore School for the Arts do, which was life-changing for me, was we sat in arts programming 4 hours a day with working artists, which gave us access to the networks and social capital. And it was also access to kids who were not making it otherwise. So I certainly didn't have a 3.0 when I got in Baltimore School for the Arts. I have a good friend who had definitely done 8th grade at least twice when she got into Baltimore School for the Arts. What's up, Beth? And I think that as a result, those schools provide a source of pride and an access point for kids who might not otherwise have one. I would say the other thing that's really huge is that DeKalb School for the Arts is DeKalb County and Tri-Cities is Fulton County, and neither APS nor City of Decatur schools nor a number of other local districts that serve the metro Atlanta area have a program like that. So for my numbers might be off, but is it 100,000 kids that are in APS? They don't have access to anything like that. Northside used to have a magnet, but they ended up having to pull it. That's where Jasmine Guy and a bunch of folks that came out of APS that had an arts focus went, but they don't have that magnet anymore.
So what's the idea? What's the idea? One, this idea doesn't exist here. Mm-hmm. So there is no door to walk into. You have to build it, right? If you would. Before we get into that, what I want to ask, because every time you say, I went to Baltimore School for the Arts, immediately following that, it changed my life. Mm-hmm. It's almost like synonymous.
They should pay me.
No, I mean, seriously. That should be the new marketing line, right? Mm-hmm. But it seems like it's synonymous when you say that, you come right behind it. Mm-hmm. Why is this important? Let's so people understand it a little bit better, because we never talked about this. We have. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like I know, but everybody else doesn't. Well,
I mean, I think specifically Baltimore School for the Arts changed my life because it gave me access to a path that I didn't know was available to me. And there are lots of schools out there that do that for lots of kids. But for me, I was a kid who didn't really fit into the school system. I was coming from a personal background that wasn't really setting me up for success. And I was ready to drop out of school when I was 16 because I was not a good fit for what was available to me. I knew about Baltimore School for the Arts, thought you had to get in when you were a freshman, hadn't known about it at that point. So when I auditioned to get in as a junior, I didn't really know that I would get in. I was pretty much ready to just go get my GED and be done with it. My parents didn't go to college. I wasn't looking at music as a career. And when I got into School for the Arts, it immediately told me something about myself. For the first time, I thought that I was talented, and for the first time, I thought that I was smart. And I mean, I can't say, some people have access to teachers and some people have access to classrooms that tell them that. But for the kids that go to Baltimore School for the Arts, for the kids that get into Chi Arts, for most of those kids, this is for a lot of them, the first time that they've been given an environment in which they're told that they're special and that they can do something really powerful and then are given the tools to do it. So I had music teachers that taught me really rigorous, college level music and never wouldn't let me screw it up. And they taught me more than just music theory and how to play an instrument. They taught me how to communicate. They taught me how to be proud of myself. They taught me how to code switch, right? Like, which was huge. Like, I didn't know how to dress appropriately. I didn't know how to talk to a certain kind of adult that was different from the sort of like working class adults that I was around. And so it was more than just the fact that I was going to a school where I was studying music. I was going to a school where all the adults believed that I had some special gift, and it was their privilege to build that gift in me because I was going to be successful. And there's nothing like that feeling.
Do you think school for the arts is for a certain type of person?
Absolutely. I think it's for a...
We are all creative.
For sure. Yeah, no, I don't think that it's a one size fits all, right? So I think that, if you are a kid who wants to take AP physics, or if you're a kid who wants to learn Chinese, if you're a kid who wants to go into a business program, right? Like, there are lots of things that a large comprehensive high school provides for you that a school for the arts will not. So this isn't there are massive gaps, I think, in access to arts education. There are massive gaps, I think, in access to education that makes us literate, compassionate citizens. And this doesn't solve that issue, right? Like, I'd love to see all kids play an instrument starting in 4th grade, and I'd love to see all kids get some sort of like theater and public speaking training, and I would love to see all that. But this would not solve that gap. This would be a school that would be a great fit for a certain group of kids who are not getting access to those resources now. And part of the
So is that the problem that this idea solves? Or is it one of many problems?
Yeah, I think it's one of many problems. I think the other thing that I was surprised by when I first moved to Atlanta in 95 from Baltimore, I was kind of like, okay, where's the School for the Arts? I want to volunteer there. Like, I don't know anybody who loved their high school as much as me, except for the other people I know who went to schools for the arts. And it's funny when you say, oh, I went to a Baltimore School for the Arts, and I mean, there's 11 of us on the founding team right now that are working to figure out how this can be manifest in Atlanta. But also anyone who is, I can't remember, I talked to somebody the other day, and she was like, oh, I went to the School for the Arts in Houston. I understand. It's a whole different ballgame. Like, it really is a different ballgame. I imagine, in New York, we've got the schools where you can go, I'm trying to think, like, there's Urban Academy. What's the one? Stuyvesant, right? Where all the kids go to do like science or whatever. Like, I imagine it's that sort of thing. Like, when you've gone to a school like that, then you bond with like all the other kids that have gone to a school like that.
I wasn't as privileged. I was liberal arts all the way, baby. I just, I was matrixed.
But I think that the big gap that the School for the Arts addresses beyond just access to arts education for really talented high school kids is it addresses a gap in equity that I see in Atlanta around arts access and leadership. So there's an incredibly talented, there's tons of talent in Atlanta in terms of art and in terms, visual arts, theater, music. I mean, but when you look at who makes the decisions and when you look at philanthropy, and there's not like a centralized place where people are working together and investing in the youth. And as a result, I feel like access to arts preparation is somewhat inequitable. So when we think that the majority of students in the Atlanta area are low income, and that the way that the majority of those students are going to access the arts is now reliant upon their parents not only having the funding to provide it for them, but also resources like transportation and just knowing where it is, there's a real, you end up with like 50 different amazing after-school programs. So it's really hard to figure out, where can I invest philanthropic resources, or where can I invest leadership or support that I'm going to be able to really get the most talented kids in the city. Like, it's sort of scattershot. And I think that this addresses that gap in a way that can promote equity and arts access. The thing, our sort of tagline is that it would build the next generation of Atlanta's artists and patrons of the arts, because I think that when you go to various arts venues throughout the city, you see a lot of socioeconomic and racial segregation that I feel like a School for the Arts could really help to mitigate in training kids who are really talented to not only become the artist, but people like me who are just huge champions of the arts and don't do anything with their art anymore as an adult.
So, with that being said, right, the creative part of it is that, and harnessing that and nurturing it. The logical portion of it, which is getting it built, getting it done, building the door. Where do you start?
Yeah,
right?
it's really...
I mean, I'm only asking that just like, because, you know, the importance of it is there. How do we build it? What does it look like? Right? I'm asking you because I've seen what it looks like because we've had those conversations. I don't want to give it away, but what does it look like? And what does it look like compared to the regular traditional, this is how kids learn? And I'm not saying taking it away from it, but this is the regular, you know, everyday, day-to-day curriculum. This is what is done over here creatively for these kids. And what, you know, once that's done, you know, how do you streamline it? Like, it's just like, how do you frame it, build it, run it, right?
It takes takes the support of an entire city. And I'll tell you that one of the things about building it that has been frankly terrifying for me is how political any sort of idea like this becomes, right?
Crazy.
So I always just sort of imagined that ideas that were rooted in what's best for kids or what's best for a community would unite people. But there's so much competition, especially in public education, for a very limited amount of funding. And we talked about this before. You know, schools are constantly being asked to do 50 different jobs with like a tenth of the money than they should have. And so as a result, anytime an idea that's really exciting like this, I think, comes up, out come all the people to be like, well, you should invest in this thing, or you should build this thing, or we've already got this thing. Why can't we just soup this up? And I think the thing that's challenging about that is that when you look at what's possible, there are 10 to 12. I just had a great conversation with the executive director at Chi Arts, which was founded about 9 years ago as a replication of Baltimore School for the Arts. And when I was talking to that executive director, like, you know, it's generally acknowledged. There's like these 10 to 13, depending on the criteria you plug in, schools nationally that are doing this work. And then there's like one in Edinburgh, and then there's like one in London. Like he always said, you look and see what school, there's a national competition called Young Arts. He said, you look and see what schools the students who are winning Young Arts are coming from, and that's sort of like the echelon of schools that are doing this like arts professional preparatory program, not a magnet program, right? Like it's an arts professional preparatory program. And the thing that they do different is the amount of time and the amount of resources and the sort of like professional artists that are working there. And again, DeKalb School for the Arts, Tri-Cities, like these are both schools that are doing that work, but they're not able to do that work for students in APS. They're not able to, there's not one place that serves all of Metro Atlanta, and there's not one place that has that sort of intensity of focus like Alexa.
What is that, politics? Is that the reason why? County lines, city lines, where you're located?
Well, there are attendance zones that prescribe who can get into what schools.
If there's a genius in, like, this is just me asking because I'm just, I just don't know. There's a genius musical whatever student in Atlanta. He's complete Mozart material.
Yeah,
he can't.
Can't go to DeKalb School for the Arts. Can't go to Tri-State. His parents could, you know,
move. I get that,
and then he could, right? But then if he doesn't have a 3.0, right? Like, I mean, there's a number of things that make that a barrier, and I think as a result, you know, you end up with questions about, you know. So I would love to see.
I mean, my point that what I'm asking you is, if I'm the headmaster at this School of the Arts, wherever it is, I'm not going to say whoever, wherever it is, just outside of Atlanta, like Atlanta, right? And there's this phenom genius. I can't get him. So we do that to our kids.
Yep.
The politics of it. Got
yeah,
it.
and I mean, the politics of it have to do with, like, you know, you pay money in your taxes into a particular place. I mean, like, that's sort of the way that public education is formed. But I think that the trickier thing is that we go through phases in education of supporting different approaches, right? Like for a long time, magnet schools were touted as being this great way to attract kids from diverse backgrounds in service of like a particular thing that they were focused on.
Right.
And what they ended up becoming was like a vehicle for sort of like affluent and white flight, right? Like people who didn't want to go to their community school because they had access to greater resources would be able to sort of position themselves to get into these magnet schools.
Right.
And then they ended up not reflecting the demographics of whatever urban center they were in. So, you know, there's some people in public education that like they don't even say the word magnet, like it's the M word, right? And other places like Gwinnett County, and to a certain extent DeKalb County, they've got magnet schools, and those are the schools that are like knocking it out of the park, right? So I think the thing that's tricky is that as what's in sort of fashion about how we serve kids, the pendulum sort of swings. Where we are right now for a lot of kids is in a place where if you are a gifted athlete, you can go to a high school that's got a really great football team or a really good basketball team. There's even, you know, competitive swimming. You know, there's a lot that you can do around sports if you go to like a big comprehensive high school.
Sure.
There's a lot that you can do around foreign language. I mean, if you live in Atlanta, you can learn Chinese, you can learn Spanish. Yeah. There's all these like we've now got these career and college academies where you can go get, you know, certified to do I don't like you can be certified like as an electrician's apprentice and right like it through a technical college and earn your high school credits. We just don't have anything like that for the arts, which seems for those teachers that are working in schools and in arts departments, it's got to be incredibly frustrating to know that you're wholly limited by the tiny little budget and the resources you have.
I still don't understand how that happens. Like, how do you have like a place that has such great access, and the one thing that you would think it's inevitable. They have one. I mean, you can go in and learn Chinese. You could be a Chinese Korean apprentice. Like, no, I'm
not a Korean.
Go ahead, G.
I feel like that arts is not a profitable part of what they can make money off of. Like learning a different language, you can work for the state doing, you know, translations or this and that. Arts aren't. You can't put too much of a value. Arts is like fun. It's not necessarily something that's seriously looked at as far as what they can put money behind and say, all right, well, the arts is putting out this many dancers, or, you know, but we're putting out this many, you know.
They don't look at it like that.
Linguistic, you know. I mean, I feel like it's a factory because the school systems pretty much train kids to be workers or train kids to be certain things, you know, or be one way. In the arts, or is that opposite to me? Because my
is
daughter,
that legit?
My daughter has been in a Montessori school since she was 2.
Yeah, and
her development, as far as my other kids who's been in traditional schools, and even me, is
different.
Wait, I'm talking about polar opposites. She's more articulate to me, more comprehensive. It's just light years ahead.
Is that true? Like, is the performance different?
So I'm
artistically, I'm just talking.
I'm not zoning out. I'm looking for the stats because I don't want to misrepresent them.
Right.
But there was a study that was done a few years ago. The acronym is SNAP, SNAAP. I can't remember what it stands for, but they went to alumni of schools for the arts. And again, like, to be fair, they didn't go to alumni of magnet programs. They went to alumni of these like 11 to 13 schools for the arts nationally, as well as folks who had gone through undergrad programs in the arts, to find out sort of where they went. Because I will tell you that every time I get excited about this idea, some people go, well, what are these people going to actually do for a job? Like, if you spend 4 years training in ballet.
That's what you're asking, right, G?
Right. Basically, they can't. People in arts, like, how often?
How are you gonna make a living?
Make a living doing being a painter. You could, but it's hard.
Right.
So according to SNAP's data, so here's a fact.
Okay.
83% of recent arts graduates who earned either an undergraduate degree or graduated from an arts high school reported that they found a first job that was either closely or somewhat related to their arts education. The schools for the arts, if we take the 11, right, that our team has been sort of researching, they have on average a 98% annual retention rate, and they're all in urban centers, and they have an average of a 99.9% graduation rate. So what that means is that they're losing about 2% of their kids annually, to do the math, if it's 400 kids, right? Like it's very atypically low, low attrition. Right. And then they're graduating at atypically high rates. Their kids are also have atypically high SAT scores. Let's not mix facts. These schools are often have lower percentage of low-income students and students of color who traditionally score lower on standardized assessments and
in a traditional environment, they test lower, they score lower, they're basically.
However, with the exception of the school in Houston, that is, and all of these schools have articulated challenges around figuring out what the right sort of demographic mix is to continue to serve their mission, but also serve their city. With the exception of Houston, that's now flip-flopped in terms of its free and reduced lunch population, which is your low-income population. All of these schools have a majority of the kids who are still considered low-income and qualify for free and reduced meals, which means that even if they are serving a higher percentage of more affluent students, they're not serving a high enough percentage that those results are based on the fact that they're just taking affluent kids. They're getting better results. And I'm going to tell you why. It's because somebody said to those kids, you're really talented. We know you're going to, it's our privilege to teach. They said the same thing to them that they said to me. It's our privilege to teach you. And everything for the next 4 years of your high school education is going to be built like around this enormous talent you have that we see in you that's going to make you successful. So to your point, there are certainly lots of kids who aren't going into the arts, but their graduation rates, their test scores, and all those are higher enough that their success rates in whatever they pursue after high school are much higher than if they had gone to their neighborhood school.
Okay, so here's the other question, based on what he said, just to define it a little bit more. Mm-hmm. When you say School for the Arts, what falls under that category? So we're clear.
So for me, and what our founding team has talked about, a School for the Arts would be a public school program. It would be partially funded by a private foundation to ensure that resources to provide the students with the arts education they need is never a barrier. The teachers of the arts would be working professionals, so they're providing the social capital and the networks. And there's nothing bigger than going to apply for conservatory and having the people in the room be people that you've already been introduced to, right? Like, there's a lot of that's huge. The number of hours that you're spending daily in that arts-intensive instruction is such that you could theoretically start the 9th grade having never had any formal training, and by the time you're a graduating senior, be competitive for conservatory. And we've had a lot of conversations with New Mexico School for the Arts, Chi Arts, Baltimore School for the Arts, and folks at LACSA about the idea of, like, what are the criteria that you assess incoming students on to determine that they're talented if they haven't had access to skill. Like, if you bring a kid in and they've never played an instrument before, that's a bit trickier, but it's feasible, right? We have graduates that have done that. But, like, if you bring somebody in who has never had formal theory, they've never read music, they've been singing in church for 8 years, can you train them up in 4 years to be competitive as a classical voice applicant at Berkeley? Yes. The training is intensive enough and there's enough time that's feasible. That would what would make it an arts professional preparatory program.
Okay, so what I'm asking is, I get it, music. So is it music, painting, like that? That's when you dumb it down for me.
Sorry.
Like, dumb it down for me to say music. Well, dumb it down for everybody so they understand it. I understood what you meant, but music, painting, like.
So the vision that our founding team has talked about is visual arts, music, both vocal and instrumental, dance, and I just blanked. Dance, music, theater. Sorry, theater.
Okay.
And the idea would be that we've had a lot of conversations with people who are like, well, you've got to have film because look at the film industry. You got to have creative writing because, like, that's a whole thing. And while there are lots of different other disciplines that could be really phenomenal assets to the school system, I think the vision for our founding team is to be able to take one of these arts professional preparatory programs like currently exists and replicate it rather than create anything new and innovative. As unexciting as that sounds, we'd rather see something that's established and proven be implemented with fidelity and done right than try something different and not be able to promise kids the results that we know a replication will provide.
I got you. Okay. So, G, does that answer? Because the reason, because what I was thinking at the end of the day, because I'm trying to rebuttal what you said, or not with the example that you brought to light, where he's talking about, okay, we talk about the School for the Arts, we talk about how it saved a life. The rest of us look at it as, not the rest of us, because I actually believe in the cause, just because I lay on that right brain side. But, the rest of the world goes, I mean, you're in the theater, you're dancing. But when you really think about it, think about how many assets kids like this can produce from the knowledge that they get from these institutions, right?
And so
you go into creative writing, not to cut you off. You go into creative writing, for example, right? You write a screenplay, you write a song, whatever it is, okay? And that gets written, registered. Boom. Who knows? Let's say you get a hit. Let's say you don't. At the end of the day, that's an asset. Because the minute somebody else picks it up and recites those lines, you're getting paid, right? Isn't that what is? And that's the one thing that we're never really taught in regular school, right? So it serves a purpose, right? And it serves a bigger purpose than, my opinion, the traditional way of learning. So it boggles me that we don't see how important this is from so many different aspects. I always say that because when I say School of the Arts, I always say creative, right? Because I just feel like this, we are creative. And within creative, there comes logic, right? Because we creatively have figured out how to do certain things in these ones and zeros, X's and O's, whatever you call it, right? You look at something as great as Facebook, right? This extreme logical, engine that works by connecting me and you. Well, there's some creative that comes with it because somebody said somewhere down the line, like, it would be great if this person and this person can chat in this manner in this room that's blue and gray, and you know what I mean? And here comes the colors, and there's a creative, right? So with that being said, and as big as we are, right, how do you get this to come? How do we creatively get this to come to fruition? How do we build it? How do we talk to the right people? What is needed? Gosh, if I had a open checkbook right now, I'd write you a check right now. So do whatever you want to do.
So
right? And at that point, when you got somebody like that in your corner, then forget everybody else.
It definitely will take some money. So feel free to open your checkbook. But there's a tremendous amount of belief in it, but I think there's also a certain amount of cutting through the politics. And I think the thing that's a drag right now is that people with good ideas about what's good for kids have to compete for this really limited amount of money. I want to go back to something just about the impact of the arts. And this isn't a tangent, but it's going to feel like one at first.
Go ahead.
I'm an assistant professor at USC, so one of my thousands of jobs that I have is to teach student teachers in their final semester as they're getting their Masters of Arts in Teaching. And these are going to be, certified high school English teachers. And one of the things that happens when you're going to get your Masters of Arts in Teaching is you spend a really significant amount of time learning theory. And we're looking at all this really rich theory about how to become literate, why to become literate, and my students are reading a book right now, which is, selected by the department that's about literary theory and about, sort of how your brain engages with text and all of this. My teachers are going into classrooms where they're being held accountable to testable skills, right? It has nothing to do with literacy. And one of the premises of this literary theory book that my students are learning is that there is no right answer about how to interpret literature. And yet their students will go take a test and have to pick the right answer about how to interpret literature. And so there's a vast disconnect between what we know to be true about how kids learn and what the function of education is and what they actually do in the classroom. And so when I think it comes to arts, it's sort of like what happens with literacy. Illiterate people are more empathetic. They're critical consumers of information. They're creative thinkers. They're able to innovate. They're able to connect to people who are different from them. That's what literature does. And literature teachers who are passionate about teaching literature are really excited about having a student understand the subtext of Toni Morrison's Beloved and not having them regurgitate what was said in chapter 7, right? But we have to spend a lot of time doing that right now because of the way the system is set up. And I think the one thing that arts education does, whether it prepares you to be a professional dancer or musician or not, it prepares you to be, it gives you resilience. If you have to learn a piece of music and perform it in front of your peers, you have to stand up and sing in a language that you don't know and hit all the right notes with an accompanist that you've only practiced with twice, right? Like, there is so much that goes into being an art student that's transferable. And there's research that supports that. But there's also my personal story, which is that I was a music major whose life was transformed by learning composition and theory. And I don't play an instrument now, but I was the first person in my family to go to college, and I got a doctorate, and I got that in education because my life was so changed by being in a school where people believed in me that I just wanted to be a part of schools where kids had teachers who believed in them. And that's becoming a harder and harder thing to manifest. And so I do think that there's tremendous value in arts education, whether you become a professional artist or not.
What instrument did you play?
Bass clarinet.
Okay,
I
was dying to ask. I was dying to ask. Like, dude,
Yeah.
what'd you play?
And occasionally the bassoon, like it was super geeky.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So awesome.
So, I'm gonna play devil's advocate for a second, just to hear your thoughts on this. So, I get it. The way our kids learn and how they're taught to interpret literature, as you said, right, is done one way. But isn't that done in the artistic world too as well? What I mean by that is this. You have great talent that I can mold, right? So I want you to interpret the music the way I think you should interpret the music. I teach you the ebbs and flows and the way that it should go. Here's the note that you need to hit. Maybe I'm thinking I need to hit this note, but the instructor comes back and says you need to hit this note. Isn't that a parallel to the same way that we learn in a regular school literature? I'm just asking. I'm being devil's advocate here.
Yeah, I mean,
just in trying to understand it.
I hear you, but no.
No, it's not like that.
I mean,
Can I answer that? Can I try to answer?
Yeah.
Because for one, it's something that the child enjoys. So I feel like the criticism that they might take from learning is different than saying something that I don't know, like math or English or something. You know what I'm saying? Like it's different.
Yeah, but it's still not like the point that I'm making. I understand your point. I'm thinking I'm going outside of me to the person that is in wherever city, county that we could possibly plop something like that into, right? Like they're thinking to themselves, well, if this is this, then isn't this the same way? Like, why do we need this? Why, just every single rebuttal that you'll get and find out like what's the answer to it.
So I would say the only thing comparable to that is, and this is something that's come up a few times, we actually have someone from a theater company locally that brought this up, which is that a lot of times after school programming, which is targeted especially to urban youth, has a real focus on things that are stereotypically, I'm air quoting, urban, right? Like we're going to teach kids, popular modern dance. We're going to teach kids DJing. We're going to teach kids sound engineering, right? Like we're going to do these things. Then what ends up happening is they can't get into a conservatory because they don't have the foundations, right? Like if you do spoken word but you've never read Shakespeare, right? You're ill equipped to be competitive for theater.
Who says? I have conversations with people all the time about this, but
there are plenty of people who can make their career having never read Shakespeare. So I'm not saying, but if you get that foundation, that's that very classical foundation.
I get it.
It equips you to be competitive in a particular space, and access to that sort of classical approach, that framework, is not something that's currently available. So to your point, the place that I could see saying that students are engaged in some sort of instruction that feels lacking in autonomy is that, yeah, you got to learn your scales, or you've got to learn these particular ballet positions, or, you know, you've got to learn these particular monologues because these are part of the classical tradition. And students are like, I don't want a part of that, or that's not the real thing, that's not what's going on, or whatever. And so for those students and for those people who are like, you know, I don't need a classical music foundation. Again, this would not be a program that fits for everybody. So if you're going on to, you know, a career in, you know, something that doesn't require a classical framework, then great. This wouldn't be the right fit for you.
Understood. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, that's a great way to explain it. What does a student body like a school like this look like? Big classes, small classes? Like, what was yours like? What was your experience like?
We were at like a 25-to-1 ratio. I mean, I think that you get a lot of overall, it's a smaller school. So at the footprint we're talking about is around 400.
Okay.
I like multiples
Student
of 25,
body.
though. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think when it comes
400 geniuses all in one building.
I think when it
Crazy.
Did you ever watch Fame when you were a kid?
Yes.
I mean, it was Fame.
Yeah,
it was
got
Leroy on the
Yeah, I
table.
got it.
I mean, I think when it comes to all of those specifics, where we are as a founding team, there are a group of us who are really committed to seeing this happen, because I think it's important for Atlanta. And I think it's important for Atlanta's youth. But honestly, more than that, I think it's important for the city of Atlanta. When I think about what the city looked like in 95 before the Olympics and what the city looks like now in 2019, the city has grown exponentially. And it seems absurd to me that there's not an epicenter for youth arts development that everyone is invested in and behind. And when I think about the fact, you know, we have friends that live in LA. They're from New Zealand. My husband's from New Zealand, and they moved to LA so their daughter could go to the Los Angeles County High School for the Arts.
Wow.
They moved there from Auckland because the mom is a filmmaker, and it was important to them that they pursue their daughter's passion in whatever her art is. We have friends that moved to Miami so that their kids could go to the School for the Arts in Miami. I knew kids when I was in high school that moved to go to Winston-Salem because the North Carolina School for the Arts had, you know, a different sort of dance program than that at Baltimore School for the Arts. So when you have people moving city because they want to find the right program for their kids, it just seems crazy to me that we don't have a program right now that's worth moving for. And that's not to say that the programs that we have in the outlying districts aren't worth moving for. It's just that the schools that are in the outlying districts that provide this sort of training aren't open to anybody. You couldn't come here from Iowa and try out for one of the schools for the arts that currently exists and get in.
How do you pick an all-star team for this school?
I don't know.
Like, what's your, you know, like, there's so many questions that I have, you know.
Me too.
She said, we're just trying to find some answers. No, I get it. I mean, we know that there's a need. We know that there's a problem. Here's a solution. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
We know the things that some of the things that needs to be done financially to get it up and running. Then you got to pick an all-star cast of who's going to take you to the moon and back.
I think this has to be a school that the entire city's behind. And I think that's what I said before about
And then we got to find the candidates.
Well, like I was frank with you, you know, coming into this conversation that like it's been very nerve-wracking for me to navigate how to have conversations about this vision without frustrating some people and disenfranchising some people. And I think when it comes to picking an all-star team, I think when you have something that the city gets behind and people go, you know what, this is good for kids. By saying that, I don't even understand how the first phrase even came out. How is this frustrating for some people when it's for our children? And the only reason I'm saying that is I can't tell you how much I spend on Play-Doh, paint, and things to paint. Just not because it's just the thing to do for my little one. It's because I see that she has that eye and that
artistic, whatever that is, you know what I mean? The artistic shaboom that I'm eventually going to have to invest into for her sake, right? And just, I mean, obviously because I appreciate it. It's where I come from. So, so I don't understand how there's frustration. That boggles me. It really does, right? It's for the kids. Is it because we just don't want?
They don't relate.
They don't agree.
They don't relate.
Scarcity theory.
Scarcity theory meaning.
We're all competing for crumbs, right? I mean, when you see.
So we're competing for money. This is a money thing.
Money, kids. I mean, they're
kids equal money. I guess
right.
It's the same thing.
I don't know that it is, because I think that if you are a school that has invested decades in trying to build out an arts program that's going to recruit the best and the brightest, and then somebody comes rolling in and they're like, hey, we're going to open this other school and we're going to do it this other way. Hey, we want you guys invest in this. Hey, we're going to recruit. I can understand why that would be. It's a delicate walk, but I think the thing that's critical about this is that this is an idea that doesn't currently exist, right? So the idea is that it's not competitive with something that currently exists. It's a different way of doing something that doesn't currently.
But it's still competitive, though.
Because at the end of the day, and you look at one of the cities that I've done a lot of work in is Memphis, and when Memphis was doing their school turnaround, they, in an interest to improve schools, overpromised seats. So what they basically said is, okay, here you 55 schools with 1,000 kids per school or whatever. We're gonna let you all open, and we're gonna fund you per kid. Now y'all get out there and see who can fill some seats, right? And so some people were able to fill their schools because they had really good branding and marketing, because they had a really good national reputation, even though they'd never existed there. Some little mom and pop schools that had it's this sort of this market economy in schooling that makes
it's
it, that
business.
turns it into.
No, we're talking a business versus we're talking an ideal. Like there's a vision and there's a thought, and you have an ideal and you want to do right, and then there's people on the other side of the fence that basically need to fill seats to make money. Listen, I get the ploy. I get it. I've been there. I mean, it's jaw dropping to hear that, but I've been in other industries where it's just as jaw dropping the way that the numbers are being, put out there. But what I'm trying to figure out is, it's still for your child, my child.
Well, I don't want to misrepresent this. So I wouldn't say that we've been met with, in our informal conversations to date, I wouldn't say that we've been met with people who weren't enthusiastic. We have a founding team of nearly 40 people who have volunteered their time and their experience and their expertise to think through what it should look like. I've got a friend who is a stunt woman and works all day getting thrown off of horses and setting herself on fire. You have to have her on this show.
By the way, she's going to be in here, G.
Yeah,
she's going to jump off of a helicopter right onto the platform to walk right in the door.
She's also one of the she's dude, she's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And she's like super smart. She can research anything. She's donated countless hours into researching other schools that exist to see what some of the parameters are. We've got other people who've donated time to researching, who are the people that have gone to schools for the arts? Like, how much does this actually matter, right? Like, what research is out there that suggests that, like, what are the actual parameters of a program that have to be in place for us to know that we're going to get these particular outcomes? So we've had tons of support in terms of donation of time and donation of energy and expertise, because people do want this. When I started poking around and asking parents, like, where would you send your kid? Like what would this be interested to you? We had over, like, in the first 3 weeks, I had something like over 100 people sign up for the parent information list. And I was like, I'm not going to be able to tell you anything anytime soon. But I mean, there's definitely a ton of interest. So I don't want to misrepresent that it's been like a bunch of bad news. I think the thing that I want to make super clear is that it's an idea that we want to move forward because it's important for the city and it's important for kids. And we don't want to step on any toes in doing it.
I understand that, and that's not what I was trying to say, because I get it. You look at you just look at the field, you look at the playing field, and you go, you know what? Here comes another property that's just going to, in my thought, increase the load. of a situation already that I'm trying to fix and balance and do well with. So I think I'm a little where the frustration comes in is that somebody would actually possibly think that it is more of a threat than it is helping, or maybe we're competing for more money. Regardless, whatever it is, what I'm saying is I don't understand if the research is there, if these platforms in some way, shape, or form, maybe not this idea, but it exists and there is success from it, right? You fill all the other criteria of needing a property such as here, population, the type of city it is, how international we've become, where we've gone from the Olympics to now. There's just so many different variables you add into it, and this is not in the equation. It's almost like it makes
It's almost like changing the Constitution.
No, it's not. We're not changing the Constitution.
Well, I'm saying that certain things or certain amendments don't. It's like laws, not the Constitution. That was a little hard, but certain laws that don't.
It's like changing the Constitution.
I'm just saying certain things don't apply to this day and age nowadays. So you're actually essentially saying that what we've been doing doesn't work as far as traditional education. So now you're going to change the whole dynamic of how children are educated to say that it works, but it just what they're saying maybe it just works for these kids, not all kids, and we haven't even tested that yet.
What would make more sense is how do we, instead of navigate, how do we sit down and have the conversation to say we can all coexist?
Well, you asked what's next, and I would tell you that for this to actually move from being an idea that we're tossing around to being something that actually happens, is that we need the people who have the interest in seeing it through to jump on board to like making it happen. And we need a public school partner. We need a public school district that wants to partner with the founding team to actually put it in place. Because at the end of the day, if we're looking to have a school that promotes equity, it has to be a public school, and it needs to be a school.
No, just curious, why?
Because that's the job of public education,
right,
is to arm citizens to be the literate, accomplished, successful people that our country needs.
Gotcha.
Like, I passionately believe in that.
Okay.
And so I think that as a public school with a public school partner, we need someone who is able to run schools, right? Like there's no reason for somebody else to have to come in and design it from the start. We want a public school partner to run the school, and then we want the School for the Arts Foundation to run the arts piece, so that we have this equitable sort of team that come together and create this world-class School for the Arts in Atlanta that finally gives the city what it should have had a long time ago.
So you think this public school partner and this foundation can work together in harmony?
Absolutely. And because we have models for that all it's a legal contract. But we have models for that all over. I mean, we're beginning to see some private entities partnering with public schools locally and starting to see some results from that. But New Mexico School for the Arts is one that has recently pulled together a partnership. But it's, public schools are designed to bring our communities together and build our kids. And how equipped they are to do that relies upon our commitment to them. And I feel confident that we have a number of public school districts locally that are well positioned to do this work if they want to do it.
You know what I like about this idea too? It's almost like, I mean, you even mentioned the film industry. It's like getting the kids armed and loaded and just ready to jump out the plane, just into the next, just jump into the rest of your life. You know what I mean? Because it's all here. And it allows what's around you to start looking and going, this is who we need to get. This is who we need to get. There's no different. It's no different than when these college coaches come to the high schools to look at the kids, or they're looking at highlight reels. It's no different. No different.
You've heard this spiel before, but I like to play this game every year. I go to see Alvin Ailey. I've gone to see Alvin Ailey every year since I was 15. I'm 43. I missed 1 year that I got snowed in Baltimore for a work engagement.
I see that happening.
And I read through the cast every year, and every year, somewhere in the ballpark of 75% to 80% of the dancers have all come from 3 to 5 schools in the country.
Wow.
And it's because they have these insane dance programs that are churning out dancers that are just really gifted and prepared to tackle the demands of a company like Alvin Ailey. I want to have that. They should be coming from Atlanta School for the Arts.
Let me ask you a question. Let's fast forward into their life, right? Mm-hmm. It goes back to what G was saying, too. These kids, can they really make money? They leave the school. Can they do all right for themselves?
Well, I'm a terrible example of that because I went into education.
Not you. I'm just saying. I know what you're talking about.
Had I gone into the arts, it could have been different.
But you know what I mean. You know what I mean.
I mean,
Craig, you come in here. I mean, the same lady that says it, as she's doctor. She's got her doctorate. I mean, that's pretty well for yourself, I would say.
I think you're rich in wisdom.
I think you've done well. I think you've done all right. But literally,
let's be honest with the listeners, though. I do live on the Atlanta side. I do live across the street from Decatur.
Okay.
I can't afford these taxes.
We forgive you.
I'm about to post up next door on the other side of the street in a minute.
East
too.
Lake.
Yeah. I'm about to be East Lake community in a minute. Thank you, Lord. As long as she recognizes it, because I thought it was just me. But anyway, no, seriously, if you harness these kids and you really nurture their talent and you make them into something, like you were saying, these dancers, do they make money? Like my daughter comes to me. And I'm just curious. Do they do well?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know that anybody studied that, but I do know that when you take a student and you build strong relationships between them and teachers who believe in them,
right,
and you give them opportunities to apply what they're learning in real world ways, you give them opportunity after opportunity to dare to be great, to take tremendous risk, and to be successful. I don't know how much money they end up making, but I don't know that matters to me.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm just thinking about it from a standpoint of a parent that goes, can you do that? I have a friend of mine who has a very talented daughter who does ballet, and she's great at it. He's always said to me, I don't know if she can.
I went to school with tons of kids who now have,
I'm pretty sure she can, but
careers at 43 in the arts. I have no idea how much money they make. Yeah. I imagine they all make more than me because I work in education.
They're probably doing well. I would say they're probably doing well. For sure. I would say they're doing well. Listen, we need to continue this conversation probably on a whenever you want basis. I would do it monthly to hear where we're at, but I think it's something that's desperately needed. And how do we get people involved is the next question as we wrap up. How do we get people involved? What's the next step? It's an idea that's being tossed around. Does it go from being tossed around to we're pouring concrete?
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I mean, I had this dream, right? And it was...
MLK did, too. And look what happened to him. He ended up with a big dream. This dream was huge. Go ahead.
It was May 13th of 2021, and I saw the date, and I saw the program, and I saw the stage, and it was opening night, and I had this really, really vivid dream. It's definitely not the timeline we're on right now. I know that to get an idea into action, that lots of people have great ideas, but not a lot of people make them actually happen. I know that this is bigger than a person, and I know that one of the things about it being a school district school means that it can withstand the test of time, right? Charter schools may come and go, but APS isn't going anywhere. DeKalb County Schools isn't going anywhere. Gwinnett County, they're always going to be there, right? And so in my mind, what it really is going to take is a community to come together and say, we want this for our kids, and we want this in Atlanta, and we want our school districts to commit to this and to enter into this partnership so we can get it done. And I think when we have parents asking for it, and when we have school board members feeling like it's a good idea, and we have superintendents who are like, yep, I want this in my district, then all the rest of the work becomes very, very easy. We've met with hundreds of people that are really excited about the idea. There's the model exists. The model's been replicated. So all the research is there. I've got staffing models. I've got budgets. I've got curricula, right? We've got a tremendously accomplished founding team that has experience and expertise that far surpasses anything that I have. So I think once we get that groundswell of support, we're good to go.
So if somebody wants to be a part of this,
they should call you.
I'll put you in.
They should write me a check.
I'll put you in touch. No, okay, that's cool.
We are just starting to have some social media presence, but we've really been sort of waiting until we have that public school partner to figure how to take it next. Because as an equal partner, we would want that public school entity to really help us shape the messaging and figure out what those next steps are.
I love that. Well, I will definitely. We're definitely one of the people here that are pushing for it, and we'll do whatever it takes because I know how important that is and how important what it can do for the kids and these young creative minds and where it could take. I mean, it could just take them to the moon and back. And I feel like a lot of people, which it's funny because I think just regardless, Atlanta, Decatur, wherever, I think there are a lot of people that believe that the arts is actually a pivotal thing that we should always have as part of our learning process, and as well as our lives, obviously. So I'm looking forward to getting this foundation built and writing my name in the first thing of concrete when nobody's looking. It's going to be nicely poured, and it's going to be like you talk about 2021, 2041, somebody's going to be like, who's MJ? And why
Michael
is
Jackson was here?
Yeah, like, what is that all about? So, and what is Decatur FM? No, I mean, but seriously, I'm looking forward to it. So let's continue to talk about it and show people how important it is. But it is going to be a challenge. I know as people have questions, we just got to figure out what the way that we can, all sit and see how great this thing can be instead of, no, let's not do that because it is for our kids. So instead of treating it like a business, I hate that. So thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to have you back for sure. We got to figure out the next date. Guys, it's so good to be back. Like I said, we have a great set of interviews set for you throughout the month of January. Lots of people. Some surprises I'm not going to talk about. It's really good to be back. Gerard, it's been too long, baby.
Too long.
So we're going to keep it going. We'll see everybody here tomorrow. Thanks for listening to Decatur FM. See you guys.